Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today. It is March 1st of 2022, and just a few hours ahead of the State of the Union that will be going out later tonight. And we want to talk to you about something that will be in the State of the Union, something that has been gaining some attention, even though the major focus of the nation and the world is on the Ukraine and Russia. But news continues. The government moves forward. There are things that are happening, and in particular, there is the Supreme Court. It is an issue that is very important to America and will have a lasting impact for decades to come. And so we want to talk about a recent poll, actually two recent polls, about the nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has been nominated for the Supreme Court. We hope you will find this interesting as we talk about what polls have just come out and told us. Before we get started, we do want to mention that if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we want to welcome you and thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to hear your voice in tweets, in chats, and also in phone calls to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all every day. And we look for those calls from anywhere in the world because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to be able to speak, no matter what your government may think, no matter what the internet overlords think. We value your voice, and we hope you'll join us this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to add your voice. So, what's going to be said tonight on the State of the Union address for 2022? Well, Joe Biden's going to be talking about many things. In fact, we know that he is revamping the speech as we speak, that there's going to be a large inclusion on foreign policy. This will be the first time that the Biden administration has been seriously talking about foreign policy since 2019. He just hasn't spoken about it. We don't know what the international policy, the foreign policy of the United States under the Biden-Harris administration is. But there will be more in this speech besides that. We're going to hear about the economics, the economy of the United States going forward. We're going to be hearing about jobs and the national debt. We're going to be hearing about Build Back Better and the inflation and what inflation will be coming very soon. And much of this will be blamed on Russia. But one thing that can't be blamed on Russia, and one of the things that we will be hearing about, is the Supreme Court and the replacement for Justice Breyer, who will be leaving this year. And so a new replacement must be put in place. And as we have said before, in fact, as we have said back on January 27th of 2022, we were mentioning that the nominee that will be, that has been picked, Miss Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has been the pick for the Biden-Harris administration, is, sadly, it's only because she's black, a woman, and under 55. That's a really sad thing. That is the basis of why she was picked, because the Biden-Harris administration need a win. They need a victory. They need something that will motivate Democrats and especially progressives to come out and to vote in the 2022 midterm elections, because as of this moment, in all polling that has been done to date, there looks to be a landslide loss for Democrats. They will lose the House, they will lose the Senate. And that's something that will devastate the Biden-Harris administration going forward, even if they replace Joe Biden with Kamala Harris in 2023, as we predict on this channel. So, why did they pick Judge Jackson? Is she qualified? We don't really know. That's something that most people are not aware of. What are her qualifications? Because the main thing that we hear from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, from Nancy Pelosi, from MSNBC and CNN, is that she's black, a woman, and under 55. Those are the primary things that she's described with. And then, separate of those issues, the next thing that we hear about her is that she is a liberal. She is progressive. She is left-leaning. She is an activist judge. These are the main things that we know about her at this time. Occasionally, they mention that she went to Harvard, that she's been on the D.C. appellate circuit, which is a high office to hold. And we cannot deny that. But she's also only been there for 6 months, which is a very, very short period of time. And in that short period of time, she's had 3 reversals. She's had 3 of her decisions overturned. And this is the part that really matters, because she was an activist judge. She reached beyond the realm of what is judicial power. She decided to take cases and make decisions that she had no right legally to be making, and therefore the cases were overturned. Now that is an important thing. I know many Democrats and many progressives will be very happy. They want to see more activist judges. And the mainstream media is doing the very best that they can to avoid telling the public this very critical fact. They're saying, well, she's qualified because she's on the D.C. appellate court, which is great, except in the time that she has been there, a little over 9 months, she's abused her power, and that should trouble people. That being said, there has been some polling about this. Now, beyond what we saw on January 27th, where we mentioned, and it was first being detailed by CNN and most of the left-wing news media, that she was one of 8 individuals, only 8 individuals who were being picked because of the color of their skin, their gender, and their political preference. Oh, and their age. Which doesn't indicate that they are the most qualified person for the position, which means the United States is getting the short shrift on this. Now, you may think that Judge Jackson is highly qualified. And more importantly, that isn't what she's being sold on. These birthright attributes are being promoted as her main focus, which detracts from anything that she has achieved in her life to date. It's kind of sad. And we see that this is being reflected in national polling at this time. In looking at a Morning Consult poll, we see that the key question that's being asked, Judge Jackson has been nominated to replace Justice Breyer on the Supreme Court. How much have you seen, read, or heard about her? And out of 2004 registered voters, what we see is that 40% of the people have no idea who she is. In fact, looking at Politico and speaking about the poll that was just done, we see that 46% of voters say they want to see Jackson confirmed. 46% of voters that they spoke to want to see her confirmed, but the overwhelming majority of voters, 28%, have never heard of her and don't have an opinion of her. So people are picking just Judge Jackson because of the color of her skin, because of her gender, because of the equity. And that's it. Politico is blaming that on the fact that, well, everyone has been focused on the Ukraine. But even as we were speaking about this on January 27th, 2 weeks before Russia invaded the Ukraine, we had the same situation that we have right now. No one knows who she is, and the only qualifications are her color of skin, and her gender. There's more than just the political poll that has come out. In fact, we want to take a look at the YouGov poll, which we had taken today, March 1st. And this poll is part of their daily chat, and we want to show you the results that we got when we took this test. So, and this is not a national poll, this is just live. The data is still being collected, but when we took this today, we see that the very first question from YouGov is, Judge Jackson graduated from Harvard University and Harvard Law School, and her experience includes 9+ years as a judge, U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit and U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Vice Chair of U.S. Sentencing Commission, Public Defender, and Supreme Court Clerk. From what you know, how qualified do you think Judge Jackson is to serve on the Supreme Court? Now, there's a problem with this question. It is presupposing an answer. It is biasing everyone that is taking this poll. And that's kind of sad, because the question here is, well, yes, she did all of these things, but they're not telling you that she only just got to the appellate court, that she's only been there for about 9 months, that she doesn't have a lot of experience. And therefore, that is a pertinent and important question when you're trying to say, this is what her experience is. She's had 9 years as a judge, but only 9 months on the DC Circuit Court. There is a difference. That is important. But they're trying to blow past that. And then they ask, from what you know of her, well, what do you think? Well, shouldn't the first question be, what do you think about her, or do you know anything about her? And then say, well, here's some of her experience, and list how long she has been a circuit judge or the vice chair of U.S. Sentencing Commission. How long was she a public defender? How long was she a Supreme Court clerk? These are important questions that inform the public as opposed to presupposing and biasing the public. So we answered the question. And the answer to the question was, she's somewhat qualified because, again, we do know that she has very little experience in the DC Circuit Court, which is one of the biggest things that would allow someone to become a Supreme Court judge, is having that experience. And so the answer is 20% of people agree that she is somewhat qualified. 52% are saying she's very qualified after being told misinformation. Well, let's see what else the poll has to say. Do you think that as a Supreme Court justice, Jackson would be too liberal, neither, or not sure? And 48% of people said that she would be too liberal. So even though we see that according to the poll, people think she's qualified, they think she's qualified as a liberal. That's very interesting. Going on, Jackson is the first black woman to be nominated for the Supreme Court. And if confirmed, she would be the first on the Supreme Court. This would fulfill Biden's campaign promise of nominating the first black woman to the Supreme Court. Do you think it was fair or unfair for Biden to promise to nominate a black woman for the Supreme Court? My answer is it's unfair. And let me be very clear. It's unfair because it's based not on the qualifications, but on the gender and skin color. Those are unfair qualifications. That doesn't mean that we're getting the best person. We're getting an agenda. We're getting a checkbox. That's unfair, both to Judge Jackson and to the American people. And honestly, the majority of people, 51% of those taking the poll, have thus far said they agree. It's unfair. because it is biased. It is a prejudice. Going further, the poll asks, and does diversity among Supreme Court justices matter to you? Now, this is a very important question. Does it matter whether or not a Supreme Court justice is diverse? In other words, that they reflect you. So that would mean, should there be a justice that's fat, a justice that's skinny, a justice that's tall, one that is short, one that is Asian, one is Indian, one that is Latin, one black, white? How many categories do we have? Transgender, gay, straight, with children, without children. How many categories do we have to go through so that they would be diverse, especially to the extreme amount that we hear progressives talk about today? It is a never-ending list of categories and checkboxes. So what did the public so far say about this? I said, not at all. And 40% of those taking the poll so far off of YouGov have said it's not important at all, because being a Supreme Court justice is about the Constitution and not about what their diversity quota is. Any court case that would come before a judge has nothing to do with whether or not they happen to be Black or Hispanic or Asian or a woman or a male, gay or straight. It has nothing to do with whether or not a case in front of them allows you to have free speech. Their diversity has nothing to do with the Constitution. But the thing that should trouble you is that 46% of the people who've taken the poll at this time have said diversity makes a difference. And I would ask you, because I think this is a critical question, I would ask the 46% of the people who've taken the poll so far to answer why. What impact does being a woman or being male or gay or straight, what difference does that make to whether or not someone has the ability to have free speech, that they are able to have, to enjoy their religion, whether or not someone has a right to be armed, whether or not they can defend themselves, whether or not you have the right to privacy in your home, or whether the government is allowed to look at your bank accounts? Where does the difference come in? How does that change based on a person's gender or sex or sexual preference? How does that change? No one ever asked that question. We are. But let's go on with the poll. The next question from the YouGov poll says, Judge Jackson would also be the first to serve on the court with experience as a public defender. Which of the following do you think would make a better Supreme Court justice? A former defense lawyer, a former prosecutor, not sure, or 68% of the people taking the poll so far say it makes no difference. Because whether you're a public defender or whether you're a prosecutor has nothing to do with, again, whether or not you have a right to privacy. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with the First Amendment. You're a good judge and you're able to rule on these things because you understand the Constitution, or you don't. Whether or not you started off defending people or prosecuting them has nothing to do with the understanding of what does the Constitution say. But let's go on. And from the below, what's most important to you when thinking about what makes a good Supreme Court justice? And you get to have three choices. I think this is really critical. 53% of people taking the poll so far have said objectivity, which we would agree with. We also said that experience practicing law. You have to know the laws to be able to judge on the laws. We also felt that education, knowing the laws, knowing the Constitution, knowing the legal system is important. Now, our choices, objectivity, have 53% of respondents agree with us. 49% agreed that experience practicing law is important. 25% said education is important, which really we would think that would be much higher, because if someone isn't educated, if they don't know the Constitution, if they don't know the legal system, if they don't know legal precedents, do you think they can actually make decisions about the Constitution properly? But 50% of people said high ethics and morals. And I would have to ask a question about that. Whose morals? Whose ethics? Honestly, whose morals? And how does that have anything to do with whether you have a right to speak, to say that you don't agree with the government, no matter who may be running the government at this moment? What does high morals have to do with whether or not you have a right to religious freedom, or to defend yourself, or to the privacy of your home, or for the state to be able to make its own laws? How does that fall into it? Where in the Constitution and the ability to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, where does morality step into that? And people also said common sense. And again, I would ask, what is common sense? What does the law have to do with common sense? Because the law doesn't have to do with common sense. It has to do with rights. Rights that may not seem like it's common sense. We hear all the time, common sense gun rights, gun control. Well, common sense would say, I have a right to defend myself. But yet we've heard from the Ninth Circuit Court, and they've said, no, you don't. You don't have a right to defend yourself. We've covered that case. So common sense, who gets to decide that? And how do you decide that? Because that's not law. The law is not common sense. But let's go on. They say, wrapping up, do you think the U.S. Senate should or should not confirm Biden's nominee? 51% believes that she should be nominated or should be confirmed. 40%, like myself, say she should not, because beyond what they have asked so far are other intrinsic and important questions, like, is she an activist judge? According to CNN and the left-leaning news media, she is a liberal activist judge. She is a progressive and an activist on the courts. In other words, creating laws that do not exist for the benefit of her political ideology. That is a problem, we believe, in the Supreme Court, whether it's on the right or the left or the center. No judge should be an activist. But yet, that's what's being promoted, and people think that should be part of our judicial system. Let's go on. And regardless of whether you think the Senate should or should not confirm Judge Jackson as a Supreme Court justice, how likely do you think it is that the Senate will confirm Judge Jackson as a Supreme Court justice? Now, this is a very important question, because 51% of people think she should be nominated, and 45% think that she is very likely. Now, in total, between somewhat and very likely, we see that there are 82% of people think she will be nominated, even though only 50% think that she should, which means that there are 30% of the population that believe she's going to be nominated even though she's not qualified, even though they have objections to her, even though there are questions about whether or not she should be the next Supreme Court justice, which means politics is overriding the system, that politics is being introduced. And we have to take this into consideration when we look at this poll. And again, we did complain about the very first question because it creates a bias in the poll. And if these numbers continue in the rankings as we've seen, we're pretty sure that YouGov will publish this poll and say, hey, look, this is what people are saying, that she should be, that she's qualified and that she should become nominated, even though they've biased the responses that they are receiving. But let's take this into consideration. The answers you just saw and what we see here. Overwhelmingly, people have no idea who she is, nor what her qualifications are, nor are they being told, according to the actual questions being asked, that she is an activist and a progressive, and that she has had rulings overturned because of her progressive activism, which I think is very critical. It's very important. Now, you may be partial to the left-leaning activist ideology. That's fantastic. I won't tell you that you shouldn't. But what I will say is, no judge should be that way. That is a problem, because that's not basing decisions on what is law. That's basing it on a political ideology that may change tomorrow. There may be a new checkbox tomorrow. Today, Black women may be the priority of the progressive movement. Tomorrow, it may be trans women. It may be Chinese trans women. It could be skinny people, fat people. It could be whatever new criteria they wish it to be. That's a moving target because it's based on politics. It's based on what gets people elected. It has nothing to do with the legal system on what is lawful and what is constitutional. When we have activist judges, we don't get the law. We get politics. And I think people should be very troubled by this. And when we hear Joe Biden at the State of the Union tonight, he will sell Judge Jackson as hard as he can. And he's going to tell us how she is Black and a woman and she's under 55. Therefore, she is qualified. And she's a progressive. She's an activist with very little experience. And therefore, she should be there because equity. Those aren't reasons. In fact, those are the very reasons why she shouldn't be a Supreme Court justice. And she is not the most qualified person. There are people who are far more qualified. They just happen to be too old, even though they are Black and they are women, because we're not getting the best person. We're just getting the right check boxes. 80% of the people taking a poll are saying, no, this is going to happen. And yet, we know that only 28% of voters even know who we're talking about. That can never be in the best interest of voters throughout the United States. But we'd like to hear what you think. Do you think that judges should be picked based on the color of their skin? Do you think judges should be picked based on their gender? Not their education, not their qualifications, not their experience, but their skin color, their gender, their sexual preference, their height, the color of clothing they like to wear. Whatever criteria that has nothing to do with education or experience, should that be a defining factor? Should that be critical? And if so, why? We'd like to hear your answers on that before the State of the Union. And then we'd like to hear your answers after it. We'll talk to you more about this very soon. Thank you.